Something inside my ceiling has been watching me through a smoke detector LED and it thinks it's keeping me safe. I'm going to read you a scary story, and I think this is not a very well known one. I can't take credit for this. I actually heard it in a podcast on my run this morning, so I didn't find it myself, but I did just want to reshare it. So this particular story is in a subreddit called No Sleep, and it is called "The Smoke Detector in My Hallway Has Been Blinking Morse Code, and I made the mistake of translating it." I want to start by saying that I am not a paranoid person. I don't check my locks twice. I don't believe in ghosts. I have never once in my life thought something was watching me. I'm saying this because what I'm about to describe has made me into someone I don't recognise, and I need to write it down before I convince myself that it isn't happening. 3 weeks ago, I noticed the smoke detector in my hallway was blinking wrong. Every smoke detector blinks. The little red LED pulses once every 30 or 40 seconds to tell you that the battery is fine. Mine has done that for the 2 years that I've lived here. Steady, predictable, background noise you stop seeing after the first week. On March 3rd, it started blinking in clusters. 2 quick blinks, pause. 3 quick blinks, pause. 1 long blink. It wasn't steady anymore, it had a rhythm. I stood in the hallway watching it for about 5 minutes before I decided it was a battery issue, told myself to replace it on the weekend, and went to bed. The next night I noticed it again. Same clusters, same rhythm, different pattern than the night before. I'm an amateur radio hobbyist. I got my licence in college, mostly because a girl I liked was into it and I never let it go after she did. I mention this because it means that I do know Morse code. Not fluently, but enough. I wasn't thinking about Morse code when I watched the detector blink, but at some point my brain started parsing the clusters automatically, the way you start reading subtitles even when you speak the language, and I realised that the blinks weren't random. They spelled my name. My full first name, 7 letters repeated 3 times, then a pause, then it started again. I stood in my hallway at 11 p.m. watching a smoke detector blink my name at me, and I want to tell you that I felt scared, but that's not accurate. I felt embarrassed, like I was the kind of person who sees shapes in clouds and thinks that they mean something. I told myself I was pattern matching, seeing signals and noise. The human brain does this. I know this, so I went to bed. The next night I set up my phone to record the detector. I let it run from midnight to 6 a.m. In the morning I played the footage back at 2 times speed and transcribed every blink. Midnight to 1:15 a.m. it blinked my name on a loop. 1:15 a.m. to 3:40 a.m. it blinked, "I can see you from here." 3:40 a.m. to 5:55 a.m. it blinked, "You look different when you sleep." I sat at my kitchen table with my transcription notebook and I read those sentences 4 times. My hands were doing something they've never done before. Not shaking, vibrating. This fast, fine tremor, like my bones were humming. I took the smoke detector off the ceiling. Standard battery-powered unit. No Wi-Fi, no smart features, no connection to anything. I opened the battery compartment. 9 volt, slightly corroded. I removed the battery. I put the detector on my kitchen counter. The LED blinked once. Without a battery, without power of any kind. 1 single blink. I watched it for 10 minutes after that. Nothing. Just the one. I threw it in the dumpster behind my building. I bought a new one from the hardware store the next morning. Installed it, new battery, tested it, normal steady blink. I felt stupid for how relieved I was. That night, the new detector blinked normally until 1 a.m. Then the clusters started. This time it said, "You threw me away." I transcribed it in real time, standing in my hallway in the dark, my phone light pointed at the ceiling, notebook in my other hand. "You threw me away, but I'm not in the detector. I'm in the ceiling. I have always been in the ceiling. The detector is just how I talk to you." I stopped transcribing. I stood there for a long time looking up. My ceiling is standard drywall, off-white, a small water stain near the bathroom from a leak that the landlord fixed before I moved in. Nothing unusual, nothing wrong, just a ceiling. It blinked again. "Don't take this one down. It's dark up here without the light and I need to see you to make sure you're still safe." I need to explain why that sentence broke something in me. Everything before this was frightening. My name, "I can see you," "you look different when you sleep," all of that is threatening. I can process threatening. Threatening means something wants to hurt you and can respond to that, and you can respond to that. But "I need to make sure you're still safe" is not threatening, it's protective. Something inside my ceiling has been watching me through a smoke detector LED and it thinks it's keeping me safe. It's not angry that I threw the old one away, it's worried that without the light it can't watch me properly. I don't know which is worse, something in your ceiling that wants to hurt you or something in your ceiling that loves you. I set up a small webcam on the bookshelf with the lens aimed at the hallway ceiling and I set it to record all night. I reviewed the footage the next morning. The detector blinked in clusters all night. I didn't transcribe those, I was focused on something else in the footage. At 3:47 a.m, For exactly 11 seconds, the red LED stopped blinking and turned solid, continuous light. And in that solid red glow, pressed flat against the ceiling around the smoke detector, there was a face. Not behind the ceiling, not inside the drywall, pressed against the surface, like somebody lying face down on the other side of a glass floor. The features were compressed, flattened, the way a child presses their face against a window. But the proportions were wrong. The face was too wide, the mouth was too long, and it was looking straight down through the detector into the hallway where I sleep. I pause the footage, I zoom in, I don't know what to expect. Something monstrous, something alien. Something I could point to and say, that is not human, that is other, and that is something I can categorise and therefore manage. The face is mine. Not similar to mine, mine. My forehead, my nose, the scar above my left eyebrow from when I was 12, my face, pressed against the ceiling from the other side, looking down at the hallway where I was sleeping, wearing an expression that I have never made. Every feature is correct, but the expression is wrong. It's the way you look at food when you haven't eaten in days. Not anger, not menace. Hunger. Deep, patient, desperate hunger. And it's smiling. I haven't slept in the hallway since. I don't know why he was anyway. I moved my mattress to the living room. The smoke detector in the living room blinks normally. I check it every night. So far the clusters haven't followed me, but last night at 2 a.m. I woke up and I looked at the living room detector and it blinked once, just once, out of rhythm. I lay in the dark for 3 hours watching it. It didn't do it again. This morning I found a crack in the living room ceiling that wasn't there yesterday. Small, barely visible. I keep telling myself it's just a crack. I'm posting this because I need someone to tell me what to do. I can't call my landlord and say there's a face in my ceiling. I can't break my lease because a smoke detector blinked my name. But I can't keep living under something that looks like me and watches me sleep with a face that is hungry. The hallway detector is still blinking in clusters. I can see it from where I'm sitting. I'm not going to translate it. It blinked my name again. I could tell without translating. You learn the rhythm of your own name faster than you'd think. The crack in my living room ceiling is slightly longer than it was this morning. I measured it with a ruler before I started writing this. It was 4 inches. It's 4.5 now. Something in my ceiling is following me, room by room. It has my face. It thinks it's protecting me, and it's getting closer. I don't think the ceiling is going to hold much longer, and I don't think what comes through is going to look like me by the time it arrives. I was listening to this running through like a really abandoned old industrial estate, and mate, I had chills. I thought that was just so subtly scary. I loved it. Bravo. That only has 450 upvotes on Reddit. It's very unknown. I just thought I'd share it because I enjoyed it. I don't know.
This hearse was said to have eaten a cowboy for breakfast every day. She is known as the Black Mariah, and she is said to have a very intense spirit attached to her that still haunts the Birdcage Theater, which is where she resides today. Welcome to my series, Haunted US, where we are covering the paranormal stories and cryptids of every state here in the United States. If you want to see yours next, make sure to comment it below. We are currently focusing on Tombstone, Arizona, and this is part 2, trying to cover all of the spirits here because there's so much to unpack from what was known to be the wickedest town in the United States. Tombstone had so many people dying, and this hearse was from Tombstone's history, and this was the one coming down the street, picking up the bodies off the street and taking them to where they need to go. So the amount of death that this thing has seen is unfathomable. The spirit that is attached to it has been described as a black shadow with glowing red eyes and is said to attack people who have disrespected women. Being that it is now in a old brothel could also be associated to some of the spirits of the women who were murdered there. These women were known as the Soiled Doves, and they were actually staged in these cages that were hung from the ceilings in order to entertain guests as well as to scope out who their next customer would be. Another famous spirit from this theater is a stagehand. In 1882, a sandbag fell on Harry, one of the stagehands' head, ending his life. People still report seeing him working and has been so solid of a manifestation, people actually think it's still one of the workers walking around until he just walks straight into a wall and disappears. He is also known to turn the lights on and off, open and close the stage curtains, and to spook the guests at times, whether that is intentional or not. If you want to learn more about some of the other spirits, make sure to check out the last video. And if you want to learn about the world's longest card game that resulted in the death of 10 men and took over 8 years, make sure to tune in for the next one. If you've had any experience in Tombstone, please make sure to drop it below. And if you enjoy videos like this, show your support by liking, following, sharing, saving for later, and commenting below which state you want to see next.
Let me tell you a terrifying story sent in by one of you about a local urban legend that turned out to be true. During lockdown, when I was extremely bored, I decided to go for a walk through some nearby fields that were about a 10-minute walk from my house. I lived in a garden city in England at the time, so there were fields everywhere. But this one in particular had a small forest in the center and a few local scary stories attached to it. I went out at around 11:30. It was still bright, but because of COVID, there was no one around. I wasn't expecting anything strange. I just wanted to get out of the house and clear my head because obviously nothing scary happens during the day. One of the local stories about that forest was about a man who was said to lurk among the trees. He was described as being about 6 feet tall, but slightly off, like someone trying to recreate a face from memory without fully getting it right. I ended up walking into the forest. At first, everything felt normal. I thought I had only been walking for about 15 minutes, but my phone had no signal, so I wasn't tracking the time properly. After a while, I started feeling like I was being watched. I decided to head toward the edge of the forest, near the path that leads to the park attached to the fields. As I got closer, I heard a single step behind me. I turned around, and there was a man. He was about 6 feet tall, pale, with light blonde hair. He was sitting in the branches of one of the trees, just watching me. I remember everything about him feeling slightly wrong, like his presence didn't fully belong there. Then, I watched him suddenly jump down from a height of about 10 feet and sprint directly toward me. I ran. Despite having issues with my knees dislocating, I ran all the way out of the forest and toward the entrance of the park. When I reached it, I turned back to see if he was still following me. He was gone. Completely gone. I checked my phone and finally had signal again. That's when I saw I had nearly 30 missed calls. According to the timestamp, I had been gone for almost 3 hours. I called my friend immediately, told him what I saw, and he came to meet me. He walked me home, and we sat in my garden while I tried to calm down. A few days later, I was rushed to the hospital after having a seizure and briefly stopped breathing for a minute. Since then, I've had something else I can't really explain. When I think too deeply about that day, I get dizzy, nauseous, and start shaking uncontrollably. Even writing this, I've had to pause several times. It's been 5 or 6 years now, and I still sometimes see him, just out of the corner of my eye, standing where he shouldn't be, or a head peeking around a doorway. What makes it worse is something that happened about 8 months ago. My father, who lives about 116 miles away from where this happened, called me and swore to me that he saw a man standing outside my bedroom window. I have a room at his house, being as I spend time there very regularly. When I asked what the man looked like, he said he was about 6 feet tall, blonde, and his face looked wrong. My father is a very no-nonsense man. He doesn't believe in anything supernatural, and I never told him about what I saw in that forest.
A woman from the Rio Grande Valley sent me this story after hearing one of my videos about a dogman sighting. Now, there's no way for me to verify any of this, so as always, this is for entertainment purposes only. So she said her husband was a truck driver, and years ago another driver told him something so bizarre that neither of the men that were involved would ever talk about it for nearly 20 minutes after the incident had occurred, because neither of them wanted to be the first person to say what they knew that they had both seen, and they didn't want to sound crazy. So this story takes place on I-35 between Laredo and San Antonio, Texas. Two truck drivers were traveling northbound, and it was really late at night. I don't even think there was anybody really on the road, and the lead truck was a few hundred yards ahead of the second driver, who was following behind him. Now, both men were talking occasionally over their CB radios as they drove through a particularly empty stretch of highway. They were really close friends, so it was something that they did to kind of keep them awake at night. Now, at some point, the driver in front noticed what looked like a large dog running alongside the median. And it wasn't unusual at first. There are plenty of stray dogs or even animals in general, in Texas. But this thing was keeping pace with them. And the closer that he got, the bigger it got. And he later described it as being much larger than any dog that he's ever seen. And then, without warning, it suddenly launched itself onto the roadway. The lead driver was expecting to hit it, and the second driver slammed on his brakes, convinced that he was about to watch this massive collision and what was about to happen right in front of him. But the animal didn't run across the highway, it flew across it. The thing leapt from the median and cleared both northbound lanes in a single jump. It didn't scramble, it didn't hesitate, didn't barely make it. It cleared the entire roadway effortlessly and landed on the far shoulder. The lead driver was so shocked at what he had seen, he couldn't even react in time. The animal touched down only moments before he had ended up passing it. And that's when he caught a glimpse of it, of what this thing actually was. Because as it landed, it started standing up. Not like a dog, rearing up to take off or, launch itself, whatever. It stood up like a human on 2 feet. The lead driver only caught a split second of it, but the second driver had a perfect view, and he watched the creature rise completely up onto 2 legs. He said it was very tall, broad shoulders, covered in dark fur, and its arms hung down at its sides. Very common for werewolf or dogman sightings. And its head slowly turned to watch the trucks pass by. He said it looked like a massive humanoid dog. Not a bear, not a coyote. They're very, very familiar with those types of animals. He said it was not like any animal that he had ever seen before. Just standing there, watching them as they passed by. And then the darkness swallowed it up as they kept going. Neither driver said a word over the radio for nearly 20 minutes as they just sat there in silence, unable to really comprehend what they had just seen. Finally, the driver in the rear keyed up on his microphone and he asked the simple question that they were both thinking. Did you see that? And the lead driver paused for several seconds before replying, and he said, you tell me what you saw first. One of those, if you go, I'll go type of deals. And the second driver described everything that they had just seen. The jump, the way it stood up, the shape of its body, the way that it turned its head and looked at them. And when he finished, there was another long silence between them. And then the lead driver quietly just said, that's exactly what I saw. Now, neither man wanted to say the word out loud because they didn't want to sound crazy or, whatever, but they both knew it. And eventually one of them finally spoke up about what they were both thinking. And he said, dude, was that a werewolf? And the other just answered, I don't know what it was, but I think you're right. And years later, both men still reportedly told the exact same story. Nothing changed, no details ever changed. It stayed the exact same for all of these years. And according to the woman who sent this to me, sightings of large dog-like humanoids have been reported throughout parts of South Texas, for decades, especially around isolated highways and ranch land near the Rio Grande Valley. Whether it was a dogman, a werewolf, or something else entirely, 2 experienced truckers and guys that have been driving for years saw this at the exact same time and saw the exact same thing. And neither of them ever found a normal explanation for what crossed that highway that night. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
You ever met somebody that gave you chills down your spine the moment that they walked away? Because I'm going to tell you about this encounter that I had before I got clean, and it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up till this day. So yes, unfortunately at the time I was in the middle of my addiction, and I used to take these day hikes in the woods by myself right outside of Asheville in the Appalachian Mountains. I specifically remember just walking down this trail, like talking to myself, like I want to do better in my life and this and that, and this gets weird, trust me. I do remember talking to God and saying like, hey, can you give me a sign please? I really want to make changes in my life. I just don't know where to start. And it wasn't long after that I kept walking down this trail, and then right when I came around the bend, I saw somebody just sitting there by a tree by themselves. I didn't really think anything of it because it's a hiking trail, so to me, it was kind of normal for somebody to be sitting there. Until this person noticed that I stopped walking, and they got up and started to approach me. Now, if this isn't creepy enough, it was also kind of really creepy to me that this person was completely barefoot. They had on raggedy old clothes, and they had like longer, shaggy hair. I literally couldn't tell if this was a man or a woman until they got close enough to me, and I stopped walking in my tracks because I started to get nervous. At this point, I'm a little nervous, so I stop and I look at them and I said, hey, can I help you? Mind you, this person had no eye contact until they stopped walking. They slowly picked their head up and they looked at me dead in the eye. This person looked like a man, but they had a high-pitched voice like a woman and looked me directly in the eye and just said, I'm sorry about your face. Real sweet, just like that, real sweet toned, and like they were genuinely concerned. I literally looked at them and I just kind of stared at them like, what? After they said that, they just looked at me and then looked off and then just walked off. I'm staring at this person as they're walking away, okay? They're literally walking away from me, and then I didn't know what to say. I was kind of just like, okay. That was when this person just stopped walking, turned around, looked at me again, and they just said, I really am sorry about your face. Then they just slowly turned around and walked back off into the woods. I have multiple other encounters similar to this, but I am telling you guys, that was one of the creepiest moments of my entire life that I've ever had, like face to face with a person. I didn't know what to say. They just walked off and I just kind of stood there. If you guys have any crazy encounters like that in your life, please put it down in the comments. I would love to read them.
This Friday night started off like any other, with Anita and her younger sister staying up late until their mom got home from church. But little did they know, about an hour before their mom was set to arrive home, this night would end up being anything but ordinary. So this church offered a little shuttle service where, you know, they would bus people to and from church. So whenever their mom would come home, they would hear that car outside, hear their mom walk up to the gate, and then call down for them to let her in. Well, it was a little bit startling when the two siblings heard their mom call for them about an hour earlier than she was set to come home. They didn't hear the car pull up or anything, just their mom's voice. Well, Anita didn't even question it, and she finds that a little strange looking back, but she just got up and went to let her mom out, and her sister grabbed her arm and said, why don't we look outside of the window first? Because I didn't hear a car. And Anita was like, I didn't hear a car either. So she goes over to the window, pulls back the curtain, and there is no one at that gate. So they are on edge for the next hour, waiting for their mom to get home. And once she is home, they hear the car, they hear her come up to the gate. They still make sure she's outside first before they go get her and tell her everything that happened. So has anything like this ever happened to you? I know it has, because I get so many stories just like this. I've had it happen. I swear we've all had a mimicking voice call for us.
I stepped in a cursed stone circle every day for 30 days, and here is what happened. I work in one of the most haunted sites in the UK, which is the Edinburgh Southbridge Vault. These are an extensive set of underground vaults that were created in 1788 and were closed in the early 1800s and reopened in the late 1900s. We've had multiple paranormal investigators. We had a coven set up in the vaults in the 90s. They set up this stone circle as a ritual space, but it's believed that it's said that there is an entity that resides in the vault they have potentially trapped inside this stone circle. We take many guests on tours throughout the day, and we always tell people, please don't step in the stone circle because there is a demon or an entity that resides in there. But obviously you can't tell grown adults what to do. People will do what they want to do, including myself. I decided to test the theory, what will happen to me if I stepped in the stone circle every day for 30 days. Here's what happened. The good is that my skin cleared. My skin mostly cleared, and I felt like I had a lot more energy. I was finding money in random places, just finding money on the street and receiving money through random things. So received a lot of opportunities in my inbox. Some of these opportunities included working with really interesting brands such as the Moon 3 Creator Circle. I worked with different local businesses. I also got an invite to the Renaissance Festival, the Renaissance Fair UK. Lots of good things happen. The bad is that I got really sick. I just got random. I mean, I've got a chronic illness, so I think that's important to note, is that my immune system's pretty bad. But I did get very sick. I injured my foot on the 4th day of stepping in the stone circle. I dropped a heavy plank that was used to lock up our office. I dropped that on my foot, so I was injured and couldn't move for couldn't walk for 3 days, and just fell out with people, started getting nightmares, you know. So my evaluation of this curse or blessing is, this is what I believe. And you can say that maybe the fact that I injured my foot, that I was getting nightmares, that I was getting sick, that's the sign of a curse, because that is what is believed, is that you've been cursed, as if you start getting really sick or you have really mild inconveniences and things happen to you. My theory is that if you believe in something enough, for example, believe in a curse or believe that you're blessed, then these things will happen, or these things will happen and it will be like a confirmation for you. Oh yeah, that's proof that I'm cursed, or oh yes, that is proof that I am blessed and my spell worked, or someone sending good luck my way, or these kind of things. And that's how superstition works. And I honestly, I'm going to say it, I don't believe in the stone circle. I don't believe in the curse of the stone circle, even though I'm a swim like, even though I'm a witch myself, this kind of stuff. I just think people sadly will look for things to confirm their viewpoints, and if you do believe it, then it can happen. So it's your choice whether you want to step in a stone circle. If you find one lying around, go ahead, see what happens, experiment. Am I going to step in the stone circle again? Probably not. Probably not. I'm not going to tempt fate again. But yeah, there's the story for you. I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm going to be creating more content. If you are interested to hear more about my experiences working in the underground vaults, leave a comment. If you want to hear about my paranormal experiences, I also have a video here as well.
Tonight we're going to be talking about Aunt Jenny Johnston, or more specifically, the ghost of Aunt Jenny Johnston. Now I'm going to back us up a little bit to Sheldon Laurel that I talked about here recently in western North Carolina, where the home guard, where the tragedy that happened at Sheldon Laurel, well, that was going on all over in Appalachia. As I said before, the Civil War was not popular in Appalachia because the residents were poor, and they all considered it a rich man's war. You know, it was a slave owner's war that really didn't affect their daily lives, and they wanted no part of it. Well, in the Bankhead National Forest area of northern Alabama is where Aunt Jenny Johnston and her brood lived. And this Confederate home guard, the same like that staged the rage on Sheldon Laurel, maybe not the exact same detachment, but definitely the same kind of deal, where they called out the patriarch of the family here in front of his wife and sons, and they strung him up. And anyway, one of the sons tried to intervene and wound up being cut down in the process. So at the end of this ordeal, the patriarch of the family and one of Aunt Jenny's sons were lost. Now this, needless to say, did not sit well with Aunt Jenny, and she swore an old school oath on this home guard that had basically torn apart her family, and she swore vengeance on him. Well, revenge is a messy business, we'll just put it like that. And none of her sons died natural deaths. Now, she was proud of this fact and said that they went out like men with their boots on. But, you know, throughout their lives, all of her sons went on to pass away in ways that were in line with that line of work, or with vengeance, we'll just put it like that. But Aunt Jenny turned the leader of the home guard into a soap dish Now, this is stuff you can't make up, and that's where truth is stranger than fiction, because I've heard the ghost stories about Aunt Jenny my whole life, but she really did have one of the gentlemen turned into a soap dish that she used up until her spry old age of 98. Aunt Jenny lived until 98, and she made a notch on her walking stick every time one of the original members of this home guard was dealt with. And by the time she passed, there was only one notch missing. And that is why they say to this day that Aunt Jenny's ghost still pops up. Now, you can find her burial place in Banks Head National Forest, close to where they lived. Now, it's been desecrated many times. It's been set on fire. So I'm not even going to give y'all the exact location. Just because they keep stealing the headstones and stuff, it's not worth it. But if you do find yourself in the area and you see a phosphorescent green glow over the cemetery, or you roll up in your car only to be run off by a spry older woman who tells you in not so polite a way to get off her property, well, you've just met Aunt Jenny, and she disappears right in front of your eyes, or disappears shortly after. And always around Halloween night is when she's supposed to be most active. Now, I love the fact that I read that there's a local librarian there that has even taken to portraying Aunt Jenny, historically accurate too, to actually preserve the history along with the ghost stories. I think that's awesome. As far as I know, they're still doing a hayride every year that is family friendly, you know, to go visit that area. But that's been the story of Aunt Jenny Johnston and her feud, her and her family's feud with the Confederate Home Guard in northern Alabama. That's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the story of Aunt Jenny. Keep sending me those stories and suggestions, guys, and keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.
Let's look at some creepy Reddit pictures. This is an old picture from 2003 taken on a flip phone. It was just my friend and I, so we weren't prepared to see a whole new face behind us. It's been out on Facebook forever, with many people claiming that it's photoshopped, but it's not. We only noticed it when we plugged the phone into a computer and saw the picture on a bigger screen. There was nobody home besides us when we took the photo. I know this for a fact because the night before, we had taken advantage of the fact that her parents were out of town and threw a party. Years later, we still don't know who that is. My friend's mom, Elle, went on a trip to New Orleans with her husband. They were at a restaurant, and my understanding is that the upstairs of the building was an apartment that is claimed to be haunted. Elle told me she started getting a stabbing sensation that was moving all around her head. Her husband started teasing her about it, and when she got annoyed, he moved on through the apartment. This left Elle alone in the sitting room. She started taking pictures, and while doing so, she felt the same stabbing sensation on the right side of her abdomen, and she became very emotional. She immediately left the room to rejoin her husband. When she reviewed the photos, she found this. She's a no-nonsense veteran and swears she was the only one in the room, and I fully believe her. This picture gives me chills every time I think about it.
Captioned, I caught this on CCTV. I live in the woods at the top of a hill. I caught a strange woman in my yard, and to mention, by the way, the ashes of the lady who lived here before were actually spread on this property. Could it be? I mean, yeah, it absolutely could. That's actually amazing. If I was you in your position, I would be doing some research on that lady to see if you could find a photo. Can you imagine if you found a photo that matches up with this? Captioned, we finally caught our house ghost. We always make jokes when we hear the ghost walking, saying, oh, here they go again needing the bathroom. But one night when we were all sitting downstairs, we heard footsteps coming from above, followed by a ping on my mum's phone from the camera. We finally caught it. Maybe spirits still need the bathroom. Who knows? On a serious note though, they say that energy is amplified through water. So maybe she actually walks all around your house and you just don't know, but maybe her energy is stronger near the bathroom. Interesting. And it's interesting that I said she, because there's nothing to say she's a she, but to me, that looks like a lady with almost like a bob.
Here's how to find out if a ghost is sat next to you right now. And yeah, I'm being serious. How to know that a spirit is sat next to you right this moment. Make sure you save this video and share it with a non-believer or a believer, because they'll just agree with everything I say. I have been practicing the craft for over 25 years. I've been going to paranormal investigations for over 15 years, and I can categorically tell you that yes, spirits exist based on the experiences that I've had, as well as experiences of hundreds and hundreds of other people that I have met on these events. So number one is just a knowing. You're in your house by yourself and you just get that feeling that you're not alone. Trust that, because it's your body telling you that there is someone there with you. They're just not in a physical body. Number two, cold spots within your house that are not explained. So if you've got a window open and it's cold outside, then obviously that's explained. But if there is a cold patch in your house that you walk through or walk past, or one room is colder than another and the heating's working and there's no other explanation for it, it usually means that a spirit is occupying that space. Number three, you know when you're in that waking, sleeping kind of moment, so you're between the dream world and kind of semi-waking up, and you hear your name being called, or you hear someone knocking on your bedroom door, and you wake up thinking, was that a dream or did I hear that? You heard it. It's a spirit trying to get your attention. Now, it could be good or bad. Number four, spirits like to affect energy currents, specifically electrical devices. So if your TV or your radio or other electrical equipment is acting up with no explanation as to why, a good one, and it's happened on numerous occasions, is TVs coming on and they are unplugged. And number five, if you're in your house by yourself and you hear footsteps upstairs or footsteps along the stairs, so it's auditory phenomena that you cannot explain, there's no one else in the house, you don't have pets, that is a sign that a spirit is there, but it could be completely residual energy depending on the age of your house. I say that because this house that I live in is grade 2 listed, it's very old and has a lot of residual energy. So the spirits here aren't necessarily here in the moment, but they're on like a replay loop.
So listen to me.
I have yet to find something that freaks me out as much as Henry McCabe's voicemail. Henry McCabe was a 32-year-old man who fathered 2 daughters with his wife of 11 years. On the night of his disappearance, he had been partying with friends at a club in Minnesota since it was Labor Day weekend, and his wife was away with the kids in California. Now, there have been differing reports about the agreement Henry and his friend had come to. Some say that it was Henry's friend that agreed to give him a ride with the understanding that he wouldn't be taking him all the way home that night, while other reports say that it was Henry who requested being dropped off elsewhere. Nevertheless, Henry and his friend left the club together around 2 a.m. before Henry would be dropped off at a gas station, never to be seen alive again. Now, here's where things get strange. Shortly after being dropped off at the gas station, Henry's wife would receive a voicemail from Henry's phone in what at first sounded like a pocket dial, but it's now believed to be Henry's final moments captured on disturbing audio. In this voicemail, you can hear gurgling, almost animalistic types of noises. He seems to be moaning and screaming in pain, and what's being said can't really be deciphered. Henry was reported missing pretty quickly after he failed to show up for his job as a state auditor, and police immediately began their search for him by questioning the last person to see Henry alive, the friend who gave him a ride, William Kennedy. When questioned, William gave police a location of the gas station where he had dropped Henry off. William also had Henry's car keys, while another friend had Henry's wallet. William claimed that Henry had left the car keys in the cup holder of his vehicle and that he'd only noticed after Henry's disappearance. So investigators began their search for Henry around the location that William gave them, but CCTV footage shows that Henry was never there. His last known whereabouts instead were discovered to be at a different gas station, even further away from his home in the opposite direction. Surveillance footage from this gas station would confirm that Henry's friend William had dropped him off here just after 2 a.m. before driving away. But that was the last that was known of what happened to Henry McCabe until nearly 2 months later. Kayakers on Lake Rush in New Brighton came across something floating in the water, and it was later confirmed to be the body of Henry McCabe, located about 6 miles away from the gas station he was last seen. Surprisingly, the autopsy would determine no signs of foul play on Henry's body, no signs of trauma, and no defensive wounds. Toxicology report would show that he did have alcohol in his system, as suspected, so his cause of death would be listed as probable drowning, while the manner of his death is still listed as undetermined. When he was found, he still had possession of all of his personal belongings, including his gold wedding band, cash in the back of his pocket, and even more bizarre, his cell phone. His cell phone, though, was found in the right pocket of his pants, while the battery for his cell phone was found in the left pocket. Another interesting development in the case is that while Henry was still missing, police received an anonymous letter that stated the following: Henry McCabe, his body next to water, partially buried. Need search dog to find. Witness who saw burial scared. Female, young. A confidential informant would also speak to police, saying that Henry met foul play at the hands of his own friends because of his political affiliations back in his native country of Liberia. But it doesn't seem like the informant elaborated on this theory. And despite all of this information, the case remains a mystery, and what happened to Henry McCabe has never been solved.
So, here we are again. It is 4:30 in the morning. I was woken up 3 a.m. to the sound of something walking up the stairs, walking down the hall, stopping outside the door to my bedroom, and then walking back down the hall and back down the stairs. And it repeated this about 4 or 5 times. I jump out of bed. As I'm getting to the door leading outside my bedroom to the hallway, I hear something scurry down the hall, run down the steps. So I go downstairs, silence. No movement. I don't hear anything. I don't know why. This is probably the 5th or 6th time in a row that this has happened. I also, the other day, had another lapse in time. I was working out in the living room, and I remember looking at my watch to check my heart rate, and it was 5:28. I sat down on the bench to take a break in between sets. Next thing I remember, I'm standing in my kitchen with my wife in front of me, in my face, calling my name, asking if I'm okay. And at that point it was 6:16 p.m. So I don't know what happened in that 45 minutes. I don't know what I did in that 45 minutes, but this is now the second time this has happened in as many weeks. I'm not saying it's related to the activity. It's just one of those things that I have no explanation for. I've never had this happen in the past, except for these past couple weeks. This is now the second time. I have a doctor's appointment scheduled. Hopefully that I can get some answers, but I just don't understand what it is. Like I said, I'm not saying it's related to the activity. It's just one of those things that I can't explain. So that's where we're at.